He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
Welcome to the show today. Big show, and I hope all of you caught yesterday's show as well. Katie Miller's conversation was really interesting and quite candid, and I really enjoyed that. And there's a few things that I picked up listening back to it yesterday. And I always got to re-listen to the shows to kind of see what are the most newsworthy moments and what are the clips. But there are a couple of things that she threw out there that were really, I think, super interesting. And one of them was she was suggesting Miles Taylor, the anonymous leaker, who was the one who held himself up as someone who is a senior administration official, so meaning a cabinet secretary, maybe the vice president. He was this kind of mid-low level guy at the Department of Homeland Security and got the whole country hooked on whatever he was going to say about how horrible Trump was, what a threat Trump was. And it turned out it was just a big hoax, basically, that he was just sort of a normal employee, the Department of Homeland Security, who no one had ever heard of and had no real power whatsoever. She suggests that he was the guy who was putting out rumors, I guess, that Stephen Miller and Katie Miller's marriage was falling apart and maybe Elon Musk was involved and Musk was pulling them apart somehow. You can infer what I mean by this without me giving too many details. And she was suggesting he was the guy who was leaking the media to try to break up their marriage, which is, of course, sinful, and it is directly contradicts the Bible that says that you're not allowed to break up marriages, you're not allowed to wreck homes. So, and that's what she was suggesting he was doing, and she said that, and I caught it at the time, but I didn't really realize what a big deal that was. I thought her answers on Kirstjen Nielsen, she did pronounce the J, Kirstjen Nielsen explaining how she was really a coward and how that was why our border policy was not as strong during Trump's first administration, and her commentary on Musk as well. All that's super interesting, plus personal stuff with her and her husband, Stephen, who is one of the most powerful people in the world. It was really interesting. So great stuff. I'm glad she was on, and we'll definitely have to have her back. So that was a treat to have that conversation. So I hope all of you caught it. We've got a monster show today because we've got already tons of news that I want to get to. I want to get to Barry Weiss perhaps taking charge of CBS News, what that means. I want to get to Google, unfortunately, winning a huge antitrust suit and what that could mean for you. And then some more Epstein stuff that came up and some Republicans throwing down some of the worst people in the Democratic establishment in order to try to get Trump for being some sort of a pedophile. But what has really overwhelmed the news this morning is Robert Kennedy just dunking on people over and over again over a very controversial and interesting nuanced topic, which is vaccine mandates, vaccine schedules throughout the country. And those are really in flux right now. And I've got a probably a more mixed take on it than some of you, but I always give the benefit of the doubt to Secretary Kennedy, who I think is actually the clearest thinker that I've seen in the country on this topic at this point. And I think a lot of his biggest fans think of him as much more radical than he is. And I do think of him as revolutionary, but he's not radical. I think he's actually revolutionary because he's one of the few people who seems to not be towing some sort of a party line based off of who's funding him. And I do feel as though that his perspective does come from a place rooted in wanting to get the freshest, most precise data and use that to guide policy rather than what feels good, what protects people's feelings, or what various industries would like to be the norms. And I find that to be deeply refreshing and important. It's why I was such a vocal supporter of his when he was up for a nomination. And we're seeing the data that suggests that he's quite popular. He might be the most popular, at least according to one poll CNN had, of all of Trump's cabinet secretaries. He might be the most popular. So he's on Capitol Hill today, and that is overwhelming the conversation. And Misty has dutifully pulled a number of clips. I'm just going to roll with these, and then I will, you can give me, and then I'll give you my take on each one. But let's just go in order of the way Misty has pulled them. Here we go.
This morning, I got the latest numbers from CDC that 76.4% of Americans now have a chronic disease. This is stunning. When my uncle was president, it was 11%. 1950, it was 3%. Today, it's 76.4%. 8 out of 10 of our kids cannot qualify for military service. This is a national security issue. When my uncle was president, we spent 0 on chronic disease. Today, we spend $1.3 trillion. It's the biggest cause. It's increasing. And all of the arguments that Republicans and Democrats have about single payer, Obamacare, or the various ways of allocate the health dollars, they're all like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. If we don't end this chronic disease, we are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at CDC. They did not do their job. This was their job to keep us healthy.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
I need to fire some of those people to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Amazing. And it's so right. And why it's right, that's a complicated thing, and everyone's got their own agenda on it. And I will certainly give you my perspective momentarily. But part of what's looming here is that there's this big pressure campaign to remove Robert Kennedy, even though he's so popular. 1,000 HHS employees signed a letter demanding his resignation. I don't fully understand their logic here, because it seems like they're just putting themselves on a database of people that he should fire. So they should all resign themselves, and if not, he should fire them all. So anyone who undermines your subordinate like this, it is an easy way to deal with these problems. I'll tell you, if there's any petition to fire me at Breitbart, you're just all getting fired. Like that's what's happening. Now, I would hope it would never come to that, because I try to be a great leader. But if that's just what would happen. And so hopefully that's what happens over there. And I don't know why they would do this, but they're trying to pressure him out because he wants to fire so many people who are part of the old guard. I haven't gotten around to it yet on the show, partially because of the holiday weekend, and we've had some great guests to start the show. So they've been packed shows to start the week. But at the end of last week, all the directors of the last CDC and basically the whole public health apparatus that failed us during COVID penned a opinion piece. It was 6 or 7 bylines of the New York Times saying how horrible Robert Kennedy was and what a threat. But you've got some of the signatories on this article are Dr. Rochelle Walensky, who I refer to as Dr. Hot Mess, because she would always come out looking completely disheveled, looking like a total mess, and then would say all these things that were either false or unconfirmed or she'd no business saying. And now she's trying to, from beyond the grave, at least career-wise, try to tell us what to do now. And no, the elections have consequences. You guys have no power, and you shouldn't. And anyone who tries to interfere with what Robert Kennedy is doing, then you got to wait your turn. You can't, it's not your turn. He was picked. He's the guy we voted for. We voted for Trump, who was endorsed by Kennedy. The Maha Coalition is a huge part of the MAGA coalition, and they wanted him in there, and there's no reason to doubt him yet. So that's something that I think is really interesting, that people feel like, I guess they see him as a vulnerability. I don't think he is. I think he seemed like he was in very strong ground, and he gets stronger whenever he comes out and he just dunks on all these people. He is so outclassing all the Democrats, and I'll play some of these clips for you momentarily. But this is very noteworthy that we do have this chronic disease epidemic. And what are the root causes? Now, I'll tell you, I don't think they're the polio vaccine. I don't think they're the measles vaccine. So more on that in a moment. But one thing that we've got obesity. When he's talking about how 8 out of 10 Americans couldn't qualify for military service, it's because we're all too fat, because we're sedentary, we're eating too much stuff, we're too lazy with what we're consuming, and the corporations are feeding us a bunch of garbage, and no one's standing up to them. So that's part of it. So that's not something that's fun to discuss, because it's uncomfortable, and it also, there aren't a lot of people who have direct financial beneficiaries, because the solution is largely consuming less in that regard. It's not necessarily consuming drugs. It's consuming less food. It's actually eating better and moving around more. And that's not a sexy answer, because no one's going to get rich doing that. A lot of people like the sexy solutions like AI, because, if AI is a solution, then there's a gold rush. If there's some sort of wristband you can wear, that's a product you can sell. That's a solution that involves a lot of people making money. And this one is going to involve some people making less money. If you're in the food industry, you should be making a little bit less, because we're eating too much. We should eat less. So hopefully we get there. And Kennedy is a big workout guy. You know, he's got his 50 pull-ups, 100 push-up challenge, which I can do. I got to do it. I wish I had. It's one of these things where it's so awkward when you don't really do social media, but I should really do that, because I can do that one. And I think that'd be fun. So I'm going to have to do that one of these days. I'm gonna have to tape it, but it's just so awkward. I don't like doing that stuff. Just here's me working out. Let me post it online because I'm a big narcissist. Like, that's the whole culture now. So, but anyway, he's pro working out, pro eating better, eating healthier. Obviously, the beef tallow stuff that he does versus the seed oils. We're all inflamed, we're all lazy, we're all tired, and why we have bad diets and we have sedentary lifestyles, we're addicted to screens. And that's really where the solution begins. But him pointing out that we got chronic disease is a big deal, and that is uncomfortable for all these people. This is the nature of if you've been in charge for a very long time and things are getting worse on your watch, you are responsible. I noted this over and over again. This was one of my go-to talking points. Really at the start of when Joe Biden was running for president and he was complaining about how we needed change. And he was the person who had been in Washington the longest of the whole political establishment, Democrat or Republican. He's the one who had the most longevity in Washington, and he's the one calling for change. Well, if we're going to have change, it can't be represented by you, the guy who's been here the whole time, who's been here decades before I was born. And that's the nature of when you see all these Democrats, they're all old, and many of them held their seats for decades. Let's get into some of that. I'm going to go with, this might be a bad guess, but let's go with number 2. Let's just keep going in order.
About anything you've done or plans to change it. And my last comment is, I hope that you will tell the American people how many preventable child deaths are an acceptable sacrifice for enacting an agenda that I think is fundamentally cruel and defies common sense. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do I got a reply? Or, Senator, you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. Mm-hmm. And you said nothing. You never asked the question why it's happening. Why is this happening? Today, for the first time in 20 years, we learned that infant mortality has increased in our country. It's not because I came in here. It's because of what happened during the Biden administration that we're going to end.
I'm going to let Senator Wyden respond briefly to that, and then we're not going to go over like.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. It's sometimes it's harder to add to some of these clips when I play our guys because they're so good. Like, that's exactly right. Is that you've been in charge, Ron Wyden, Senator Wyden, and you've gotten very rich from the Senate, and your family gets rich, and you all benefit from your power. But what have you done to help Americans? So are Americans healthier? And so you're going to lecture me. I'm coming in as an outsider, trying to fix this. I've been thinking about this critically for decades. Speaking of as Secretary Kennedy here, and you're just going to lecture me. Like, we're not having a conversation. We're having a lecture. So it's just a terrible look for Democrats. And of course, it doesn't help. And I know we do a lot of the physical stuff now all of a sudden on the show. I can't help myself sometimes, but he looks like he's 1,000 years old. This is a guy who's not, he's fat and happy. He's getting rich. He's not doing anything. He's enjoying his power and his money, and he's not doing anything to help us. And it's just important to note this, that we are being led by some very deeply unimpressive people at the moment in our Senate. And I have a lot more evidence of that coming up. Here we go.
Credentials and expertise. Clearly, you have an agenda. It is a threat to the public health of the American people. It's clear that you are carrying out your extremist beliefs, which is why you attempted to fire Dr.
We're the sickest people in the world. We're the sickest people on earth.
I'm speaking.
How am I a threat?
Secretary Kennedy.
Hey, we're already getting sicker, and his beliefs are very popular. They're popular beliefs, and a lot of them are middle of the road. And a lot of the extremist beliefs are coming from the rest of the political establishment in every which way. The people who think that we should do nothing different, or the people who think we should just medicate everyone. Those are kind of extremist beliefs, aren't they? Not that can we maybe rein in some of the things that we've decided we are all just going to go headlong into, like eating buckets of seed oils every day, and we're not healthier since we've been doing that. So can we look at that? I don't know. It seems like a good idea to me. Let's continue.
Want to turn everything into a soundbite. It makes it, you can't have a grown-up conversation. But there were more reports to VAERS, which is the only surveillance system that we have, of injuries and deaths from that vaccine that all vaccines put together in history.
We're talking about COVID vaccine.
In history. So we have to acknowledge that there was a cause. We acknowledge that there was a benefit. We can't quantify either one because of the data chaos at CDC.
Do you hear what he said, though, also that there was a cause and there was a benefit? So he's not an extremist in this regard. He's not even acting as though it was all evil and it was all just fed to us by Big Pharma and it was all it didn't have a purpose at all. It was just what we were told about this vaccine was not true. And yet it was mandated when we didn't fully understand it. We didn't have a fair discussion about negative side effects and consequences for certain people. A lot of the worst consequences were for the people who needed it least, which was younger people who got the myocarditis. So we never were able to have a conversation. We were just forced it down our throat. And that's what he's standing against. Let's let him roll, and then I'll opine some more.
Vaccines put together in history. So we have to acknowledge that there was a cause. We acknowledge that there was a benefit. We can't quantify either one because of the data chaos at CDC. And that's all I'm saying. And they think I'm being evasive because I won't make a kind of a statement that's almost religious in nature. Did it save 1 million lives? Well, there's no data to support that. There may be data, there's no study, there's modeling studies, there's faulty data. I'm not going to sign on to something if I can't do it to a scientific certainty. It doesn't mean that I'm, anti-vax. It just means I'm pro-science.
Yeah, I love that. That's the talking point. I hope he keeps hitting that I'm the pro-science one, not you guys. And I think I studied this quite a bit during the vaccine debate because it was a very hot debate, particularly for conservative audiences. And I studied it quite a bit again for Breaking Biden, where I had a very interesting chapter on the coronavirus vaccine. It's not one that I publicized a lot because I think some of my conclusions were not necessarily things that my core audience loves to hear all the time. But the bottom line is what we're to understand from the way COVID was handled is, first of all, the mask, there was never any science to them. And we learned very quickly they were probably doing a lot of harm. We learned very quickly that trapping people inside was a mistake. We learned very quickly that the lockdowns were causing mental health issues for children and were not keeping people any healthier. In fact, it was keeping kids who could get the virus and then were going to survive it because young, healthy kids always did, 99.999% or whatever the data was. And then they come back in the home with older parents and grandparents who would not necessarily survive the virus and just pass it to them. So we know that all that was wrong. And then with the vaccine, we were told it would prevent the virus, of course. And then we were told it was a mistake to get it because it was a Trump vaccine. And then once Trump was out, then if you didn't get it, you were the devil, basically. So we learned that there was no evidence that children needed it at all. We learned that there was no evidence that young, healthy people needed it. In fact, there were big side effects for young, healthy people. And yet we were told, you couldn't play in NBA games unless you were getting the shot. All of that took away from the fact that it probably was very helpful for older people with pre-existing conditions, not as a vaccine the way we think of the polio vaccine or the measles vaccine, whereas if you get it, you don't get the virus. You do get the virus, it's just the symptoms are less. And you could never lay out all those facts to people without getting called all sorts of names and acting as though you're some sort of shield for someone. And that's what caused the trust to erode. And that's what caused for people to think, well, maybe what we were told about the other vaccines is also not accurate. And this is where we're going to have a real problem. We also learned yesterday that Florida is going to try to lessen some of the vaccine schedule, try to make it so there are fewer mandatory vaccines in the state. And I don't think this is a good hill to die on for Ron DeSantis and Ron DeSanctimonious. Because if you really want to get out of vaccine mandates, you always can. There's always a way to do it. There's always some sort of medical or religious exemption. It's just a matter of paperwork. It's just you got to do the effort. There was something out here in California that was very similar for years, and it kind of worked okay, which is that marijuana, for example, was illegal, but you could get it medically. But everyone knew that people were getting it medically, didn't really have a medical condition that needed it. It was just they were willing to go do the paperwork and go to the dispensary, which had some sort of control over it. And it seemed like that was kind of okay. And I think the pot culture has been horrific. Never smoked pot once myself. I'm against it completely. But it seemed like as a free-ish people, we're not completely free, a free-ish people, that was kind of working. So it was technically illegal. So there was a way for the government to crack down on it. But if it was really important to you and you're an adult and you're willing to go jump through a few hoops, you could get it. And that's kind of how the vax scheduling works out for the most part, is that these are highly recommended and to the point where they're mandated. But if you really want to get out of it, you can get out of it if you have to. And that has really worked. It's worked with a lot of these vaccines, particularly measles, particularly with polio, which we eradicated polio, which was completely devastating, and we eradicated it. There's virtually no known side effects to the polio vaccine, and now it's going to get questioned. And we're seeing people like, the Candace Owenses of the world, people command large audiences and act very confident because she's done her own homework. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to throw out decades of data, and we're just going to, stop doing the polio vaccine. So, well, let's see if there's a resurgence in polio. Maybe enough time has passed, it's not going to happen. But if it does happen, it's going to be truly devastating. Same thing goes with measles, where 30% of measles cases have complications to them. And the most extreme complications are lasting brain damage or death, stuff like encephalitis. And there's no real downsides known to the measles vaccine. So we eradicated measles, basically. And thus we had made it so that is so much less likely that you get these horrific side effects that cause seizures, coma, permanent brain damage. And the government did the homework for us in that regard, but this is when it was trustworthy. And so now what's happened is because the pro-COVID vax side was so strident about how good the vax was going to be and failed so colossally because the vaccine turned out, to be helpful for certain groups of people and to be totally unhelpful to many others that were mandated to take it, military personnel. You can't work in the military unless you're willing to submit yourself to this. All that's going to do is going to cause us to go backwards because now we're questioning all this stuff that we didn't need to question. We didn't need to question the measles vaccine or the COVID vaccine. Contrary to the belief of some people in my audience, the conservative online audience, we do get something right sometimes. We don't always get everything wrong. And that's sort of the implication here is that now we're thinking, well, maybe we got everything wrong. Well, no, we got the COVID vaccine wrong to a large degree. We got the COVID masking wrong completely. So now we're going to look back at stuff we got right, which is measles, polio, et cetera, and we're going to question that. And that's the fear here. And I don't blame anyone aside from those CDC frauds, the Dr. Fauci's of the world, the friendly fascist Francis Collins, Dr. Hot Mess Rochelle Walensky, all of these people, Albert Bourla, the Pfizer guy, the Pfizer CEO. And I got to tell you, Big Pharma does a lot of good. Pfizer does a lot of good. But they oversold that thing right down our throat, and it was just so egregious they did this. Because that is what caused this erosion in public trust. And so Kennedy's coming in and saying, I just want to see the data. I want to see the science. I am going to check the hypotheses that have been put forward. Because contrary to what Al Gore said about the climate, the science is never settled. And the science, if it's at its best, is getting questioned constantly, over and over again. As we get new information, as we get more sophisticated ways of doing studies, as other environmental conditions change, as we get new drugs, as we get new outside inputs, you question stuff. You check it out. And so the solution isn't we're not doing the polio vaccines or we're not doing the measles vaccines. The solution should be that the COVID vaccines, that there's some accountability for what happens. We fully get an accounting of what's up, what's down, what's right, what's wrong. And it's alarming to me that we don't have one of our major political parties just decides if the Trump administration is for it, we're a knee-jerk against it. And that played out from the moment this virus came down. Everything Trump did was wrong. And then even if they were taking Trump's recommendations after Trump had left, they would never acknowledge anything good he did. And that's why we're in such precarious ground. So if anyone's going to navigate it, I trust Ted Kennedy. I trust Robert Kennedy to do it. But I don't trust everyone, even on our own side. And I don't know what Ron DeSanctimonious is up to in Florida. I don't know why this is the hill he's dying on, where he's going to rejigger the vaccine schedule in Florida. I just don't know why. It was kind of working. So I don't want the COVID vaccine on it. But the established ones, the ones that we know, the ones that have been studied, the ones with virtually no known side effects after decades, when we've eradicated viruses, when we have eradicated infectious diseases. The whole goal is we're working towards eradicating the infectious diseases we can. Then we treat the chronic diseases, which Kennedy's on. And then the goal is to be preventative so that we're preventing people from getting any of these diseases to begin with. So in order for us to go along that arc, we can't go backwards and start reintroducing some of these infectious diseases that we had thought we had beaten to this point. So anyway, it's a very important thing to discuss. It really is. And that's why it's worthy of a lot of time. Let's do some more time on it. We got more Kennedy. Let's do it.
Look, two young ladies in Las Cruces.
Oh, this is Senator Lujan from New Mexico. This will be a mind-blowing clip because this is what I'm saying when I'm saying we are not being led by worthy people.
Young ladies in Las Cruces, New Mexico at a town hall recently gave me this starfish pin. I was going to give it to you today, but after your questioning today, I don't think you deserve it because what this represents is to remember that every one of us can make a difference, sir, to something as small as a starfish on a beach that maybe got washed up, you throw it back in the ocean. You might not save them all, but you can save one. I'm sorry that you're not worthy of this nice little pin, sir, as a nice reminder. I'm going to pray for you, Secretary Kennedy. I hope we do better. I want you to do better. But today was a failure for you, man. I yield back.
Senator Warnock.
Today was a failure for you, man. Oh, man. They're some real dummies in the Democrat. It's sad, though. It is sad. You would think it's supposed to be the most sophisticated, the best deliberative body of all time, history of mankind, the U.S. Senate. And we get, this guy's got to be a low IQ guy, right? I was not familiar with him, but New Mexico. This is a failure for you, man. That's what I'm saying on my New Mexico audience, seeing this guy. It's a failure for you, man. Okay. All right. One more, Kennedy.
Will you tell America that all adults and all children over 6 months of age are eligible to get a COVID booster at their local pharmacy today?
Anybody can get the booster.
I'm sorry?
Anybody can get it, Senator.
Anybody. So you're saying that is now the official rule of HHS. Anybody is eligible to get a booster by just walking into the pharmacy.
It's not recommended for healthy people.
No.
So this is just where I keep saying, and I'm waiting for someone to show me the clip where he sounds crazy. He sounds totally normal. He's saying it's not recommended. It's not that you're not free to get it, and Pfizer isn't free to sell it to you. And you're not free to inject your kids with it, even though they don't need it. Like, he's saying you're free to do that stuff. So, but that said, it's not a great idea. And that's what we're saying. How is that anything short of pure science? And Warren, who either hadn't done homework or is just has blinders on. This is you guys know the voice. It's Pocahontas Warren. Is she shocked by this information? He's giving her the exact right answer.
No, if you don't recommend, then the consequence of that in many states is that you can't walk into a pharmacy and get one. It means insurance companies don't have to cover the $200 or so cost. As Senator Dr. Cassidy said, you are effectively denying people vaccines.
We're not going to recommend a product for which there's no clinical data for that indication.
It's just a recommendation. He's saying there's no clinical data saying that kids need a COVID vaccine, particularly now when COVID symptoms are much less and they're much harder to pinpoint. And I got to tell you that I think COVID is everywhere all the time now. And I think that toothpaste is way out of the tube. And I talk to doctors about this in my personal life, but it's hard to back up with data to bring to the show. But they think COVID is just everywhere and it's low grade. And a lot of these weird illnesses you guys are getting all the time are COVID related. We're seeing out in LA, Los Angeles Times, big article recommending people mask up. This is real. They're recommending people mask up for coronavirus in LA at this time. So it's the mask never worked. And now we're seeing recommendations because of COVID, which is always here. And it's not going to go away. Because remember, it was created by the Chinese in a lab in Wuhan, funded by America, thanks to Dr. Fauci. So that's the origin of it. And it actually is a bigger deal that happened to us than the whole vaccine debate, which has overwhelmed everything because the vaccine debate was handled so poorly. So thus we keep talking about try to dunk on each other.
Is that what I should be doing?
What you should be doing is honoring your promise that you made when you were looking to get confirmed in this job.
You're going like this.
And that is, you promised that you would not take away vaccines from anyone who wanted them. You just changed the classification of the COVID vaccine.
I'm not taking them away from people, Senator.
It takes it away if you can't get it from your pharmacist.
Well, most Americans are going to be able to get it from their pharmacy for free. Most Americans will be able to get it from their pharmacy for free.
The question is, everyone who wants it, that was your promise.
No, I didn't. I never promised that I was going to recommend products with which there is no indication.
When you said...
And I know you've taken $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies, Senator.
Did you hold up a big sign saying that you were lying when you said that? Because you are the one who said you would not take them away. Now, Senator Kennedy,
I'm not taking them away from anybody.
Secretary,
you want me to indicate?
All right, now just evolving the Abby Phillips show on CNN, where they're just talking over each other, just fighting over each other. So look, but what a dunk! Look, she's on the bag on the dole from Big Pharma, and Big Pharma has every right to do that in this country. But it's just, she's not disclosing, but she's arguing for something that is not scientific, and that's the whole thing. Is that I'm not a Big Pharma wants to come advertise for me on this show. I'm up for it, but I'm not going to bring anything to the audience that's not scientific. Here's the issue: is the connection that's being made is that she's taking money and then she's going against the science, not him. She's trying to advocate for basically parents to inject their kids with the vaccine they don't need, and she is no background in science whatsoever. So she's a law professor from Harvard and a fake Indian. She's no authority on this, and she was in charge during the pandemic, which was failing. Amazing. So powerful. And that's why you could see how that would overwhelm the news cycle. And there's a lot of other big stuff, though, I do want to get to. Did I send you this Tim Kaine clip, Misty? If so, I'm not going to play it. We can play it tomorrow. I got to get you this clip that I'm looking at. But there's so much happening, but I will bring you a couple of big ones in the time that we have left together. Justice Department's considering ban on transgendered people from owning firearms. Come on, guys. We did it. We're doing it. This is a Marlow Show special. And I should have pulled up the clip because people are not getting the full context on X, the Everything app. But I played I called for this last week. I said, this is a checkmate on the Alex Marlow Show. You guys are at the cutting edge now. This is official. I called last week. I said that we're doing gun bans for trans. Gun bans for trans. Remember, I said we're going to make the T-shirts. And the whole point is this is a checkmate for Democrats, because we're going to see if the Democrats are serious about banning firearms. Then this is an opportunity, because even though we know the Second Amendment says that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, we do infringe them all the time. Can't have them if you're a felon. Can't have them if you're a child. You can't have them if you're criminally insane. And so if we're seeing a pattern that people who have a transgender mental illness where they're willing to take hormones and mutilate their body in order to live out a unscientific fantasy that they can change their sex from male to female or female to male, that we can determine that they are in that group that could be categorized as, well, your gun rights do get infringed if that's the case. So test the Democrats with that. Let's bring it up. Let's see what they say, because we don't let everyone with mental illness get guns. So let's add that to the group and let's see what they say, because they're in between a rock and a hard place. They can say, no, we want the trans to be able to get assault rifles. And so then it shows that they are really cool with people having assault rifles. Or they can say, we subscribe, we're in on it, let's go for it, and let's see how that goes. Because I think that works out for us in the end, people who would like in general for people to have that right to keep and bear arms that is uninfringed. So I like it. I think it's a good test, and the Justice Department is now considering a transgender gun ban, and I just think that is absolutely over the target. And again, you heard it here first on the Marlow Show last week. We were on top of this. So that's it. So it's just great. It's just great to see results. Look, you know what? We call for results and we get results. You guys recall my number one person I wanted investigated from breaking the law was Letitia James. 3 days later, we get the Letitia James investigation announced. And then now we're calling for gun bans for trans, and immediately Justice Department is on it. So it's good. Hey, we're living the dream here. We're living the dream here. Speaking of living the dream, Trump has chosen his next city to deploy law and order, to bring law and order back, and it is Chicago. As of the beginning of the recording of the show, apparently, Trump is going to imminently deploy a surge of federal resources to Chicago, and this is going to be part of DHS crackdown on illegal immigration. You can bet that the mayor there, Brandon Johnson, the governor, J.B. Pritzker, are going to be furious about this. Did you catch what Trump was doing on his Truth Social last night? I was going to make Misty pull all these, but it was a lot of work, and you guys can just go to Trump's Truth Social. He was just posting all these memes all night of him dunking on people in various ways, and the best one was he had Chris Christie and J.B. Pritzker in an AI sumo wrestling match. So Christie versus Pritzker, the two fattest American politicians, fighting with each other. Though I think Pritzker's got Christie by 100 pounds, right? I mean, he's much bigger than Christie, I think. So they were fighting with each other in a sumo wrestling ring. So that was unbelievable. But now Trump's going right at him, and he's going to try to clean up Chicago, and he's going to start with the immigration stuff, and let's go from there. All right, more cleanup. Trump's doing. Justice Department's issued subpoenas in criminal investigation of Lisa Cook's alleged mortgage fraud. So that continues. So now we are going to continue to put pressure on the bad guys. You guys have got to be squeaky clean if you want to take on Trump. And if you want to take on Trump and his movement, you be squeaky clean, because he will come at you, because he understands that it's not about retribution. It's just the smash mouth politics of the era. That's where we are. We can't have weak people. We have strong people. And if you're going to be part of the resistance from within our government, and Trump does not have a great recourse to fire you, maybe he does in this case. He's trying to fire her. He's trying to figure out if he can constitutionally. But if he can't, then you better be prepared for him to come at you with all he's got. After what was done to him, after what's documented in breaking the law, then he has every right to use whatever legal means necessary to apply pressure to people he does not want in his administration, undermining the democratic will of the American people who put him in office. That's a big deal. Okay, I'll opine for a minute here. I don't want to go too long. I got a couple other big ones here, but I'll opine for a minute, just digging in deeper in the Epstein stuff. And I don't know who got to Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, but they got them out there with Gloria Allred in front of signs that say release the Epstein files with pictures of Trump, and pedophile of the United States with a picture of Trump that says POTUS. It's the posing in front of anti-Trump signs with left-wing people who get paid money to try to sue people to make Trump look bad is just a horrible look. And I've always thought Massie was a big grandstander, and I'm looking forward to him getting primaried. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is always sort of an iconoclast and all over the map on stuff. Sometimes you love her, sometimes you hate her. I always thought that was the thing, but this was not some sort of principled stand. This is just trying to get attention, right? That's all this was. So the Epstein stuff was totally disgraceful yesterday that we saw. Gloria Allred, Lisa Bloom out there who were mother-daughter. And these are the exact people who hyped the Me Too stuff, and they're just trying to get Trump. That's all this is about. No one genuinely believes Trump is a pedophile. They're trying to just make his life difficult. If Trump was a pedophile, then why did Joe Biden sit on that information? Because it doesn't exist. And you actually saw one of the attorneys for some of the Epstein victims. One of them actually implied that there was even a pedophile ring at all that Epstein was presiding over. So it's becoming clear to me that we've taken a lot of things in that case as gospel, which are not gospel. And there's so many other people who just have put way more time and effort into this than I have, which is why I don't tend to focus on it on the show. But I know these patterns, and these patterns are their key witness. This for Virginia Giuffre person is not a credible person. I think she was the one who had to retract a bunch of claims against Alan Dershowitz. So who fought hard to clear his name. And it just makes you think that it's just not what meets the eye. And Epstein's a bad guy. I don't know if he killed himself or not. But what I do know is that our wildest dreams about clandestine pedophile rings run by the Mossad, that's not what it's going to be. It's just not what it's going to be. And it's time to move on. Hopefully people do. And I would love more accountability. Let's get it. But we're not getting it. So I don't want to spend that much time on it, especially when you're getting Republicans out there being pawns for the left to try to distract us from stuff that really matters. Okay. Let's see, couple other ones to wrap up that are big. Oh, one of them that I will mention. So Barry Weiss, who is a very odd figure in our media, that she's a liberal person who used to work at the New York Times and then quit the New York Times and stated all these things about the Times and their resistance to open-mindedness, free speech, free thought, that all of us on the right had agreed with for years. She just said stuff that we've been saying for a very long time. And then she got a lot of attention for this because she's a liberal. She worked at the New York Times. She's a lesbian, which is helpful, I think, in this regard. And just in terms of the woke, she's got woke points. And she used it to really boost her popularity and her online profile. She used it to start a website called The Free Press, which is by and large pretty good. It has a small footprint, a very small footprint, but it's the content they put out is pretty good. It's some of it's a little too sanitary and generic for my taste, but it's mostly quality stuff. And she's doing that. And then now the reports are that she's going to be taking over editorial control of CBS News, which is shocking. And admittedly, my first reaction was irritation with it. Let me give you my initial thoughts on Weiss, who I was asked on my friend Michelle Tafoya's podcast on this very network, Salem Podcast Network, just a few weeks ago. She asked me what I thought of Barry Weiss, and I gave what I thought was a pretty good answer. So I asked Misty to pull that for you. So this is me on Michelle Tafoya's show. Check this out. A good coffee is easy to find, but great coffee, that is much harder to discover. And when I was introduced to Crockett coffee, I knew this was special. It's roasted to perfection in small batches by experts who love the taste of great coffee. And I love the taste of great coffee. I'm really precise with it. I got a nice espresso machine. I get the scales out. I try to do it right. And this coffee justifies the effort. I feel like a Western settler when I drink it. And also I feel like a tired blogger who needs to get revved up to do some podcasting. Whatever you are, it fits your lifestyle as well, because they got the K-Cups, they got the decaf, they got the light roast, dark roast, they got a mushroom organic blend. I'm a dark roast guy, but the others are great as well. And plus, these are good people. It's not just about the beans, which are great, but also they give back to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, showing that they never forget. And we like these guys, Buck Sexton, Clay Travis, great broadcasters, good friends as well. So it's good to support them because they fight for freedom when they're not making coffee. My first name, Alex, gets you 20% off at checkout. You go to crockettcoffee.com, crockettcoffee.com, 20% off at checkout with the code Alex.
One of the bigger moves in the whole legacy media to me came from Barry Weiss leaving the New York Times and writing a piece that said why she was leaving the New York Times and starting the Free Press, which has a really diverse cast of characters there writing. What do you think of her outlet?
So what Barry Weiss does is that she came up with a bunch of ideas that we were talking about at Breitbart 10 years ago. But because she worked at the New York Times and started talking about them from that context, then she's been hailed as some sort of a genius. I have no idea if she's a genius. I think she gets a lot of stuff wrong. And I think she's a good businesswoman. I think that she's done a nice job starting an outlet from scratch right now is really hard. So she gets a ton of credit for that. I think she's a great marketer. I've never talked to her. I have no idea. Maybe she'd blow me away with her intellect, but I feel like the pattern is she says stuff that is very obvious to me, but she says it from a unique perspective.
Gotcha.
in that she's a former New York Times writer. She's a lesbian. And she's, I think, a default liberal. And I think all of that is a much more interesting package than me, straight white guy from, What do you think? I mean, that's right. Okay. So it's a hat tip to me. That was good. So anyway, she's going to get control over CBS News and they're going to buy her outlet, the Free Press, for $100 million or $200 million, and which is completely absurd. I mean, I was looking at the Free Press. Let's pull this up right now on X, the Everything app. Their X account has, how many followers do they have? They have 357,000. The Breitbart, we've got a couple of million, and we're the biggest on Instagram. We're the biggest or second biggest after Fox on the Facebook. And then I think we're the sixth biggest outlet on X, and no one's no one's offering me $200 million to go take over editorial. And why is that? It's because there's something going on. There's something up. I don't know what it is. But it is still, even though I find her to be somewhat of an irritating figure, because I do think that she rips off a lot of the best ideas that people in the controversial online right have had for the last decade and a half, and just co-opt them and then turn them into a business model for herself. It is still an improvement. And I want to say this to people because I had a very interesting conversation with a friend who's deeply annoyed by this, even more so than I am. And I want to reassure them that this is okay. This is a positive. So if Barry Weiss, who is not a leftist and is someone who's pro-Israel, pro-free speech in general, and I think open-minded to right-of-center viewpoints, if she is able to take editorial control over CBS, it is kind of awesome. It just is, because it is another win-win scenario where maybe she does a great job. She's clearly not an idiot. She's clearly a good business person, and her values aren't as bad as the people who are currently at CBS. Maybe it's a success, and maybe the country gets a little better informed. That's fine. And here's the other thing, though. What if she fails? What if she blows it up? What if she destroys CBS? That's great, too, because CBS is mostly a force for ill. In this country, very rarely do they break anything that's of substance. All they do is fill a lot of space for news that more interesting, more cutting edge, more accurate, more compelling voices could fill if CBS wasn't there. So I think it is a win-win, and highly irritating, considering you guys just heard my opinion of Weiss, which is not, I don't have a high opinion of her, but I still think a positive, and I don't think anyone is going to bring that specific take. So I really want to make sure that that was in the ecosystem here, that it is, I'm not a fan of hers, and I still think it's great. And I think that's kind of cool. So maybe she'll prove me wrong, and that'll be great. I'll be very happy if she does. And if she doesn't, and she blows up CBS in the process, that would be great too. The one missing piece, though, is I just don't get how the site is valued at $100 million or $200 million. I just do not see the math on that at all. Because again, if you get a $200 million offer for us, then please, by all means, head our way over at Breitbart, because we did pick the president in 2016, basically, right? I mean, he wouldn't have got elected without us, and we're certainly a big part of it in 2024 as well. So I'd say we get some stroke over here, the Breitbart realm. So I'm waiting for that $200 million buyout. And Misty, could you imagine how much production quality we could have if we had a budget that level? It'd be something. It would be a feat to watch. So just think about it. All right, last one, because I teased it, I will bring up, and I did a Breitbart Fight Club on this, a Breitbart Confidential a couple of days ago that you should check out with Colin Medine. But Google has avoided a big antitrust case. They've won big league, and this bad news is for all of us. It was hope that Google was going to have to siphon off parts of their monopoly, where they have a huge monopoly in search. They also have a monopoly on browsing with the Chrome browser now, as that keeps building up. And there was a huge effort to force the Chrome browser to be sold and to start breaking up some of this big tech master of the universe, the oligarchy that they've created by, I think, separating parts of the biggest player in that space, which is Google. And they're the worst. They're the ones who are the most discriminatory against conservative thought. And they are a huge part of rewiring our brain, where the default factory setting is going to exclude a lot of the information that we're pointing out at Breitbart, because recall, they banned us at Breitbart, that you don't get Breitbart content, even though we've been the most reliably accurate of any major news outlet this century in America. We still are not a part of any sort of Google sourcing, and that's because it's garbage in, garbage out. And the algorithm is upstream of politics. Winton Hall, our tech editor, not our tech editor, our social media editor at Breitbart, he had this great quote that the algorithm is upstream of politics. So the code is upstream of politics. So when you write the code, so the Breitbart's unincorporated, then it affects the politics in a major way. So doing harm to Google would have been terrific. And they beat a huge antitrust case. And this also helps Apple, because Apple gets a $20 million payday every year from Google to make sure that Google is the default browser on people's iPhone and Apple devices. So this is a big cabal. It's really nasty, and it does hurt the politics of our country because it does prioritize certain voices that are less accurate and are more left. And that's a bad thing. So I don't know what can be done about it, but I do want to bring that to your attention and to offer up the Breitbart News. We have a lot more information on that front. Okay, that is jam-packed and not an unreasonable amount of time. That is very cool. So a lot more to do. Breitbart.com for more. And there is it's just a hot news atmosphere, but we're excited. Exciting stuff. All right. Thanks, Misty. Thanks, John Cassio, for pulling clips, and all of you in the audience. Don't forget to subscribe to everything that I'm doing, YouTube in particular. I think people like that, but picking up a copy of Breaking the Law to keep yourself informed and on the cutting edge of all the lawfare that's going on every single day. Another judge gets in the way of something, and you can learn all the ins and outs of it in Breaking the Law and how to fight back, which we'll tackle that some more when we have a little more time. That's it for today. See you tomorrow.